Hey guys, it's Mountain Monday, so you know what to do. Breathe in and out, and breathe in and out. Okay, so for those of you who know, Mountain Monday was created because the weekends tend to be crazy place on social media, and Mondays are sort of, I wanted to give a way for people to find their zen again. But Mountain Monday doesn't really fit on this channel anymore, the way it's shaped up. Obviously, this channel has evolved significantly since I started doing it as, a lark. It's become a lot more serious and a lot more meaningful to people. But people like Mountain Monday, so I want to find a way to make it more relevant to the whole idea of supporting gamers and enriching people's gaming experience and giving back to gamers and thanking gamers for being awesome, because gamers take a lot of crap and we need to kind of balance the scales on that one. And something happened over the weekend, and a person who goes by the name of GameDiviner on YouTube is in a not a great place. It's sort of a crisis moment. I'm not going to get into the details of it because for people who don't know, it's not really relevant. For people who do know, I don't want to wade into the details of it because that's not what I want to do here. If people are interested, they can look at his own YouTube channel. As I said, it's GameDiviner, all one word. But I just sort of want to I want to boost the signal in a different way. And it's that way where, here we are, a snapshot, character study of how gamers are the greatest people in the world. Anybody who spends any amount of time on social media gets to the point where they feel betrayed. Somebody is not who they've, what's the word I'm looking for, presented themselves to be. And you get to the point where you don't know if you can trust anybody. Everything just seems so overwhelming and so duplicitous that you have a crisis. And it messes with, the whole concept of reality for some people, because online is a massive portion of people's lives. It's where they meet a lot of people with common interests, because, especially if you're a gamer, you may not necessarily have people with common interests in the vicinity in which you live. I don't have any gamer friends, especially close to me. Even in, downtown Toronto is not close. I live in a suburb of Toronto because I like trees and animals, and couldn't live downtown. It's too noisy, it's smelly, it's too irritating to my asthma, yada, yada, yada. So I keep in touch with people through, social networks, even in my own city. But I know they're real. It's a totally different thing when you meet someone online. And I've been, I've had my share of ups and downs with that. Some people turned out to be great people who I ended up meeting in real life. Some people turned out to be not so awesome. And, that happens. That happens with people. So why should online be any different? But GameDiviner talked about a few things. One, I was incredibly touched by his message of forgiveness, that, he didn't want to lay blame. He didn't want to talk about who was right and who was wrong with the thing. He wanted to just tell his story. For those of you aware of certain religious traditions, testimony is very freeing and very cleansing for some people, and I think that's what he was doing. But he also wanted to get the message out that the damage done through trolling on social media is real and has a real human component. And I think that's something that is, I don't want to say brave, because I don't want to do that stunning and brave thing that, South Park so accurately Why does this mountain not full screen? There we are, full screen mountain. Um, South Park so accurately pointed out is fraught with peril, but I think what he did uh, was very pure, and I want to respond in that spirit. By the way, inside joke, GameDiviner, if you're watching this, I call dibs on the Punisher in Civil War because I think I'm probably the guy sitting there kind of to himself in the side who thinks both sides are not the way they do things, but, hanging more with the side that seems less stupid. That probably describes me most of anyone of Marvel's Civil War, so I call dibs on the Punisher. Um, but I digress. I think that um, that someone's worst moments when somebody's really down shows you what kind of person they are. And GameDiviner showed himself to be a very forgiving person, a very family-oriented person, somebody who legitimately wants to do good in the world. But he's also clearly a gamer because, and so I want us, sort of pay tribute to that in that instead of just, replicating what he was saying and just signal boosting, and I want to treat it like a mod, and I want to add, play, create, share, add my little embellishments to that mod and turn it into sort of open source code, for lack of a better term. And I'd love it if people could sort of make their own videos of forgiveness and in the spirit of gaming and thinking gaming deserves to, play superheroes, yes, but also know when it's time to stop fighting and remember what we have in common and, sort of be a message of healing, which I got a lot of what he was saying, and to let people know that it is real, even though we don't, see each other face to face. It is real in a lot of ways. And I mean, for those of you who don't know GameDiviner, and probably a lot more people saw the whole SPJ Airplay thing, he was the guy that sort of stood up in the audience and had, that I am Spartacus moment, for lack of a better term. He sort of stood up and spoke for gamers, because there weren't a lot of gamers on that panel about ethics in game journalism. And it was a very human moment. It was a moment that I think a lot of people really related to. And so it kind of became Insta famous online all of a sudden. And that's a lot of pressure. And when you do that, things definitely change. And he referenced in his video that thing of don't trust anybody, not even me, things like that. And I think that's, you can't know what's real, you can't even know I'm real, that kind of thing. I think that's not a good way to approach the internet. I don't. I think that if you live in that reality, I think that you're feeding that reality. The internet is as honest or as dishonest in your little sphere of it as you make it, because the internet is essentially on its own, completely neutral and disinterested in humanity. If you want to do a gaming comparison, the internet's like the Fade. It's where we go and we dream, but the maker really doesn't give a shit. He gave up on humanity a long time ago, turned his sight away because people went into his golden city and turned it freaking black. That was from Dragon Age, by the way. And I think the internet's very much the same way. It can be a shining golden city, but most people, once they start touching it, it all turns black and nasty. And I think it's easy to say, oh, it's the company you keep, because on something like Twitter, the entire purpose of Twitter is that communications are porous. The reason I like Twitter is that it makes it very clear that you have no control who sees your public tweets. There's a lot of workarounds on Facebook to see what people are saying, and I'd much rather just be reminded that, hey, saying anything on social network is like yelling into the street or having a conversation in a public restaurant. It can be overheard, and That's the thing that I keep in mind with the internet, that, if you're doing something, you have to do it as if you're constantly playing to an audience. And that's very tiring. It's also a great exercise in self-control, so I think it's worthwhile. But yeah, you've constantly gotta take it as, would I want my kids to see this, or would I want this blasted all over the place? And we all trust and we all slip from that, and that's very human. And I think that people who betray trust for whatever reason, they're doing that. They're betraying that trust, and that's not good. I mean, there are ways of, and I know this because, I work in the media. There's times where people say this is off the record and you have to respect that, or if you ever want them to talk to you again, respecting when a source says this is off the record, this is on the record. It's important because you need to build that trust. You need to make a person understand that you're doing this, you're collecting news because you believe it to be in the public interest, not to try to, feather your own nest or make a name for yourself, or, getting the story and getting that story are not the same. And I think there's definitely a lot of people doing that on the internet now because they have been consumed by identity politics, and they think that, the outcome, the ends justify the means, for lack of a better term. But when you're in the realm of ideas, which is what's beautiful about the internet is a realm of ideas. The ends can't justify the means because the means inform the ending. If you try to get to an honest place through duplicity, you're never going to find it, because guess what? That road doesn't lead there. Okay? Anything you do through dishonest means is going to take you to dishonestyville population liars. In order to get somewhere honest, you have to be honest, and you have to treat people straight. And there's no shortcuts. There's really no shortcuts. I mean, I've certainly learned that the past year has really restored a lot of my faith in humanity. People who started talking to me a year ago didn't know that shortly before that, I pretty much lost all my real life friends, except for, a very small handful who stuck with me because of, well, if you've been following, you know who that person is. But it's amazing how one disreputable person can demolish the surprisingly fragile bonds between people and just throw everything into a spin. People were so scared and so acting in self-defense that they did a lot of things that they're going to have to live with. And I was left with one really good friend locally, some more who don't live very far. My best friend doesn't live near me. So, people didn't know that about me when it started. And, I had to leave a particular website because of repeated dox attempts by a so-called colleague over a stupid fight over a video game. I'd already been brigaded once by the online community in support of, ironically, the same damn game. And I had a really, how do I put this? I was very jaded when it came to the video game community. I mean, I was seeing a lot of people claiming a lot of things about games that I just knew in my gut weren't true. I think when you're a gamer since the age of 3, you can pretty much say I've been a gamer all my life and mean it. Um, and I think GameDiviner talked about the fact that it's not just you play games; it's the way you see the world. You gamify your existence, and you know, meeting the people I have and seeing how much other people care, really care, even if I don't agree with their viewpoints, even if I know from the inside they're completely barking up the wrong tree regarding the game's press and regarding how it works and regarding how the industry works and where the real levers of power are and what we can do about fixing it. The fact that they care has been so inspiring, and I hate to see one of those people who really care really rattled to their core like GameDiviner was. But, I know he'll be okay because, he's got his family and he's got his faith and he's got friends that do care about him, even though he's not sure maybe who they are right now. And, as crazy as it's been, as rough as it was for me early on, basically just being at the wrong place at the wrong time. I mean, what are the odds, right, that a one-off freelance piece for a website gets delayed 3 weeks and lands just at the worst possible time to make everybody think there was some, oh, she's a plant, she's a shill, she did this deliberately, she made her trust us, and she made us trust her, and then, oh, she writes for Polygon. What are the odds, right? What are the odds of that happening? That's insane. But it allowed me to be right at the center of it and really get, a taste of the worst that the video game community could dish out. And yes, I do mean threats, and I won't say credible threats, because people online, it's not credible threats. A credible threat is someone who knows you and can access you and is following your movements, and there's something deeply personal motivating that individual. A stranger in the video game community, you're not going to get that. Like, trust me, guys, I have been in a place where I've received credible threats. They're people They're people who, you've probably offended through no fault of your own, but it's there, but it's real and it's close and it's tangible, and they usually know you live and what your movements are. Somebody on the internet, unless they are, and this goes beyond like high level trolling. This goes into black hat territory, right? You're probably not going to get that in video games. And if you do, call the police immediately. This is not what we're talking about here. And one of the big things I've enjoyed is seeing the conversation turn and seeing the discussion about, online harassment move away from this idea of criminality and whether it should be criminal to it becoming a community thing. That's what I've been advocating all along is, criminal harassment it's like that's the stuff you skim off the top. That's the imagine the gaming community is a swimming pool, and the criminal level harassment is the stuff you actually take a physical tool and skim right off the top, the leaves that fall in, the nasty stuff floating in the in the top of the pool that's really disgusting and has to come out right away. The stuff we're dealing with that we still are working on finding tools with is the stuff you put chlorine in your pool for, whatever chemical they use now. I know chlorine isn't allowed in some places, but it's the stuff that's harder to see, harder to determine exactly what it is. And, GameDiviner talked about how much it can wreck you because it is a community problem. And in a lot of ways, it's very frustrating because, as horrible as the stories are with law enforcement and as slow as law enforcement is and unwilling to get off their butts and do anything about stuff that happens on the internet, the vast majority of the stuff that is very hurtful is not criminal. Does this mean we should do nothing about it? No, that's where community comes in. That's why we have each other. the thing to remember about the police and about the law that I think a lot of people forget is that's the last resort. That's where you go when everything else fails, right? And that's what people seem to forget. Something annoys you, you call the cops in this day and age. Not only is that a waste of police resources, it shows that you don't actually engage with your community. Instead of sitting down a kid and telling them what they did wrong and why they shouldn't do it again, you call the police. It's insane. It's insane. People are using a last resort as a first thing. And for a while there, people were not taking any sort of harassment seriously, or trolling seriously, unless there was a criminal complaint. And that was crazy. And that wasn't just in video games. It's true of a lot of geek spheres like conventions and things like that, events, because no one wants to be the one that excludes someone, that dreaded word exclusion. But sometimes you have to do it, and it's been cool to watch things gradually over, the past year slowly start coming around to that understanding. And there's some people who really get it now. And those are our community leaders of tomorrow. Those are the people that, if we can empower, can really go on to set an example. Because sure, people like me with a following, people like me with, a lot of quote unquote followers. I hate that blinking term because it sounds cult-like. I call them viewers, people who engage, content consumers. That's how I think of you guys. We can do one thing, and there's our part to play for gaming in the greater world. I need people to be my advocates and go out and discuss these concepts and get people moving and get people coordinating and get people organizing. Not for these grand schemes, like not for, I call them ops. Just being engaged and being active. And you guys probably don't realize how thoroughly important that is. And I've heard a lot of people say, I don't have a voice. We can't do anything. Well, people have this idea that if they speak their mind, they'll get stomped flat. And that's crazy to me, because there's nothing more motivating for me than when I receive a message that is sincere. It isn't just trying to bash. It isn't coming on with a ton of aggression. People aren't hiding behind anger. They're telling it, and they're taking a risk, and they're being vulnerable, and they're really relating to something I said. And I didn't even know I was saying it to them, but it touched them in some way. That's powerful. And so there is stuff you guys can do. And there is stuff. And so I just wanted to sort of dedicate this video to one gamer who, GameDiviner, who has just been speaking his truth and following his own internal moral compass all the way along. And does that mean he's perfect? No, nobody's perfect. Like, oh God, why do people even feel the need to say that? Like, we have to put that caveat on it. Like, oh, it doesn't mean I don't make mistakes. It doesn't mean it doesn't mean I agree with everything he's saying. But no, of course not. What a boring place it would be if we all agree. To me, that's assumed. Okay? To me, when you hear me endorse someone, assume that I don't agree with everything they've said. But I think they get enough right that I can go, this is someone worth listening to. And what I think GameDiviner embodies is just this purity of spirit, this belief in people that has taken someone who's, clearly introverted and clearly, not the first person someone would think of when it comes to sort of a public life, but gaming was important enough to him to stand up and be counted. And agree with him, disagree with him, you got to admit, that's awesome. And we need more of that that pure sort of I am vulnerable and I am hurting and this is important to me, and less of this sneering or whatever. We need less of that, and we need more of gamers just showing themselves and showing their hearts. And you know, I know it's scary to come out from that shadow of anonymity, but in order to be counted, you need a face and a voice and a personhood. And I really give him credit for that. I really give him credit for showing himself at a low moment, because that is gaming to me. That passion and that spirit and that willingness to try new things. I mean, we're a culture of early adopters, right? If nobody bought those devices when everybody's going, I'll wait 6 months, well, they'd never get sold, right? Nobody would be there to work the bugs out. So those are the hardcores. Those are my people. Those are the ones that, yeah, it's probably going to be buggy and I'm going to complain like crazy, but I am going to be first in line every single time. That's a gamer. And that's a spirit of hope. Nobody buys something expecting it to be garbage, really. They want to love it, or they want to love not loving it. But that's the spirit of gaming, is that early adopter, that optimism that comes with being an early adopter. That idea that even though it's going to be full of bugs, that early access, that beta, that stuff, that you want to be in on the ground floor and you want to experience something new and you want to be a part of that newness. You want to, blaze new trails. You want to be part of something that matters, something that's innovative, something that hasn't been done before. That's a gamer. That's the gamer mentality. That's the gamer identity. And it's much deeper than what people thought it was. And all this stuff, going back to, a lot of people discuss Gertzman Gate as one of the roots of, our current troubles. But I think the Mass Effect 3 ending debacle is also a root of this. More and more I'm hearing about it, that roots go back to that. And a lot of people were exceptionally upset about that, and people called them entitled and this and that. And it wasn't that at all. It was, they felt like it was almost like people were dealing with loss. They had no closure. And so they were in a state of denial. And unless you've actually seen people grieve like that, you don't understand that there is a lot of anger inherent in that process. And a lot of people shut them out. But I guess I kind of felt like, holy cow, the company stumbled once and all the fans revolted. But what I realize now is that those fans cared enough to revolt. And they thought that the people that made those games would listen to them. And that's amazing. And BioWare did. Good for BioWare that it did listen, because that's the difference between games and everything else. I mean, if people think, like a lot of people thought the Seinfeld ending sucked. Did they go and reshoot the ending? No, I still think they should, quite honestly. Because that's something that gaming does. And companies can give out free DLC when people aren't happy. And I think all we have to do is find a way to express that displeasure, that dissatisfaction with a product more confidently. And once we do that, I think we got it down, because the passion's there and the caring's there and the investment is there. And that's what I love about being gamers. It's been a real cleanse from the cynicism and the shallowness of working in television and the disposable feeling of working in radio and the, all those very shallow, disconnected elements of working in the mass media. I feel a lot more like I was in theater, where everybody's in there together, and there's no rarefied air between the wardrobe and the set and the actors. Everybody's there, and the hours are crazy, and so everybody's kind of in it together in their own way. And that's my training. I started in theater, and so I miss that. And I mean, the fact that I've sort of found that again in a different way in gamers, that's amazing. And so that's what I wanted to add to the discussion that GameDiviner started. And I'd love to hear what you guys would like to add. I'd love people to sort of start making their own videos and send them to me and tag them sort of, about games. And I'd love to continue that sort of raw, I believe in gaming. There we are. That's where we can start. I believe in gaming. That's what the video's about. And I'd love to see just people express their belief, express their faith in games in the gaming industry. And I think it could be really powerful. So I look forward to what you guys can come up with that way. Hopefully somebody will take me up on it. But that's what I wanted to add to the discussion. So without further ado, ready? Okay, breathe in. And out. And breathe in. And out.